the release of the Spring to Life update, we're now at 5 game drops complete for Minecraft and 3 into our new normal of 1 every 3 months. But with our 6th drop on the way already, it's worth taking a step back and asking, is this actually better than the previous system of updates? I'm not going to mindlessly bash or praise, but instead we can break this down into the reasons this is great and the reasons that people tend to hate, and that's precisely what I'm going to do in this video. And so, hello, I'm IBXToyCat, and in this video I want to explain the case behind why drops might be the best thing to happen to Minecraft in a long time, according to some people, but why some people, and even YouTubers, are on board the case that this is the worst thing to happen to Minecraft. How can there be such polarizing opinions on something that seems so innocent on the surface? Well, let's talk about game drops today, and let's start with an explanation of what they actually are, because Minecraft updates used to just be whenever developers wanted, multiple times per year, multiple times per day in the earliest days of Minecraft, but in recent Minecraft history, it shifted to the idea of an update being a once-a-year content drop, with most of the features being focused around a single theme. When that theme is great, things seem to work fine, like with the Never update, but when it's not, it feels like an entire year of Minecraft development is wasted on something that is as nebulous as Tails and Trails. What is the actual theme of that update? It's really hard to decide, and so game drops are the solution to this, because instead of having 3 to 4 updates that kind of masquerade as one, what if we instead release them one by one? And so that is what happened when they soft launched the drop system with bats and pots and the armored claws. These ideas both were pretty exciting changes to Minecraft, but they were made outside of a major update as just a fun little bonus to see how people liked it, and the answer was they did. And so Minecraft has decided, instead of doing once a year major updates around a major theme, what if we did tiny content drops? And so we've seen the hardcore bundle update, we've seen the Garden Awakens, and we've seen Spring to Life, and now we're even working towards the summer drop. And so it's worth asking at this point whether the game drops are a good thing, and I think that many people would argue they are, with the biggest reason being regular releases. Let's be honest, in 2013, maybe one update a year would have cut it, but the way that games work now is if you want to exist and be relevant, you need to have multiple game updates a year, multiple reasons to get people reinvested in the game, and one a year just doesn't do it. Additionally, one a year updates means that there's a big period between one update releasing and the next being announced 4 months later, where no one has any clue what's happening in Minecraft. This is a bad thing, not just for people who like to speculate, I'll be honest, that's part of what I like, but also it just means that you have no idea what Mojang are up to. Are they doing great things? Are they working on content behind the scenes? We had no idea, and this is a bad thing on a transparency level as well as on a content receiving level. Also, I think another benefit of the game drop system that is underrated is the fact that we get more themed content now, and there's more time to randomly polish parts of the game. For example, in the Spring to Life update, they decided to work on adding new variants to pigs and cows, just like we'd seen with rabbits before, but what's interesting about this is they also decided in the same update to go ahead and decide, why doesn't the villager have all of the best parts of the villager trading update? And so now there are brand new maps that you can trade for from villagers. This is great. I love this as a change, and it's a great example of how, yeah, actually doing regular releases might seem like it's more work in some ways, and it might seem like you get less content if you look at some of the drop sizes, but the end result is it does mean there's more time to randomly get a feature done, because you know that the users aren't going to be waiting months to receive it, but it can be done much faster. Also, this does give us the opportunity for more bug fixing, in theory, and it also then matches the cadence of old Minecraft. If the golden era of Minecraft is 1.8, which people keep telling me it is, then the, or maybe you might say it's the old console edition days, which I'll nostalgically go ahead and say it's my favorite time, but both of these versions had updates 2 to 4 times a year, and something about that just seems to work. Every single month, you know, you're either expecting an update, so you know what to be excited for, or you know that there is going to be an update releasing and you can finally play with it in your world. I think that the Minecraft snapshot beta system, where we get to see updates before they come out, is perfectly built around an update every 3 or 4 months, and it's awfully built for the once a year update, because by the time an update actually released, the Wild update is a great example of this. People had seen the Warden in gameplay trailers for 1.18, and then people had seen the Warden in snapshots for literally 6 months, and so by the time it comes out, people go, yeah, well, he's meant to be terrifying, but how come I can kill him using this cheesy method? The truth is that snapshots and betas just don't really work for once a year updates, and they work perfectly for these game drops, because every single week means something, and I love that about modern Minecraft. And so that is the biggest reason that I think game drops are good, but it has to be mentioned that game drops do have a dark side as well, a dark side that is even highlighted by some YouTubers as being one of the worst things. And that dark side is so clear to everyone who interacts with it that it threatens to undermine the entire system and maybe be the undoing of drops. But first things first, let's talk about the obvious thing. Drops have been so far quite small. Obviously, there are lots of very small drops, and then there are lots of medium-sized drops, but there's yet to be a truly large game drop, and this is a problem because drops are there to replace larger updates, and so the idea should be that you're getting at minimum one update spread across all of these drops, and ideally getting even more. But if we think about what Sam the G 1801 here says, which is that the summer drop needs to be big, because otherwise 1.22, when you split it into its component parts, that is to say all the drops that could have been combined for 1.22, the bundles drop, the Garden Awakens, Spring, and then the summer drop will have been one of the worst update cycles in the game's history. And it's a good point. I mean, imagine if 1.22 came out right now and we hadn't got a single drop in that time, but instead it was all of those features combined. You would say, what is this update? First of all, it's too many distinct parts, but the sum total of it all really isn't on par with the great updates of all time. It's on par with maybe Tales and Trails at a stretch, and this is a problem. So Mojang clearly needs to do a great job of the summer drop, or they'll actually be pushing less content out per year rather than more, or at the very least generously the same amount. But I think another big problem with these drops is just how many players do not understand them, and even crucially, when we look at communication from Mojang and Mojang employees, even then there is a huge inconsistency between what is a drop and what is an update. This is because, broadly speaking, they figured that they were calling updates before, but now they are calling them drops. But the problem is that to upload a drop to the game, you still have to update it, and so you get confusing terminology like this, where there's a developer calling one thing a drop and another thing a drop update. Is that to say that that drop update will be 1.22, bigger than a normal drop, or is that to say that a drop just comes as an update, but it's still going to be a drop? Are they two different things? It's very, very hard to work out what is said and meant by basically anything, because Mojang wants there to be a brand new system so bad, but don't necessarily want to communicate all of the nitty-gritty details. They did one big blog post about a year ago talking about that, but even then it was still very vague about future initiatives and if these truly mean big updates or if they mean something else. The fact that right now we are looking at the summer drop as our next game drop, but we still can't say with 100% certainty if that drop will be a drop or an update, is a failure in communication at the very least, and maybe a failure of the system more broadly. I mean, if you think about how a self-checkout works, no one has any questions that it's like checking out, but you do it yourself. If you think about how basically any business succeeds, it is in communicating what they do very clearly. When you go to Pizza Hut, you don't expect to find burgers there, but Minecraft are telling us, yeah, we have updates and drops, except drops are updates, updates aren't drops, and the version numbering is something that you'll have to work out when we release them, and so good luck with that, and that is a failure in my opinion. I think another failure probably has to come from the fact that each individual drop is small, and this isn't a bad thing by itself, but because they only have a 3-month development cycle, it means they don't take much opportunity to gather feedback. This is meant to be a crucial part of the snapshot or beta or preview system, and it's entirely fine to say you don't want to have it. However, a lot of credence is theoretically given to player feedback, and a lot of the idea is meant to be that they care so much about it, but there is so little time between a feature being broken or a feature being upgraded and that feature coming out that it's hard for the community to really digest it and understand what do they want to do. Whereas if we think about Minecraft 1.21, there were two things that the community really hated when they came to the game. The first of these was the copper bulb. It used to have a small delay in it, and that was able to be used to do all sorts of fun redstone things. However, this was later removed, and the community did not like that. And the second was the mace, which came out in a very powerful form, so powerful in fact that many people knee-jerk responded by saying, oh, you need to nerf this is too powerful. And because the mace was near the end of the development cycle, Mojang kind of had to decide near instantly, are we going to release a weapon that the community think is OP, or are we going to have to nerf it? And because they had next to no time, they couldn't decide whether it was the best thing not to nerf something, and so they didn't go with that, despite I think most people agreeing with the fact that actually the original mace wouldn't have been that broken, because they had to respond so quickly to get the update out there, whereas the copper bulb, even though I think a lot of redstone players are upset with it, they decided to keep the original design, but they had time to make that decision for themselves, and even though we could argue they made that decision wrong, it was their decision to make rather than having to respond to the community on a knee-jerk reaction. And so, for one final big point against the idea of drops, allow me to bring up the issue of parity. We talk about it so much here on this channel, now, but having a shorter drop cycle means there is less time to deal with the parity induced by an update. I think that we could argue they just haven't really been trying since the drop system. With the example of hardcore and bundles, those are both features that existed on Java, and so I guess it was nice to have a whole drop about bringing them to Bedrock, but when it comes to the winter drop, Creaking Hearts, the major feature of the update, were just rarer on Bedrock by a massive factor. You needed to go through at least 8 times as many Pale Gardens to find one, and that ruined a lot of people with the main release, the one that came out after all the betas, because they didn't have time. In the spring drop, we see major features added to Java with no Bedrock equivalent, the beacon beams being the best example of that, but there are many other such features because, oh yeah, we couldn't get this working in the Bedrock engine, and what are we going to do, just remove it from Java? This is a real struggle that they had in the year-long update cycle, but at least a year gave them time to solve it. Now we just see them going, we don't really have time to solve it, so we just won't. This is a good thing in some ways, but it's also disastrous for the concept of parity, which they've spent so much time and effort on just to say, we actually have to move away from that right now, which is a big problem, and that is the fourth, and perhaps maybe the biggest reason in which parity is bad. Before we even talk about the fact that update version names don't make sense to anyone, there is a whole side of the community that call this update 1.20, 1.6, a whole other side that will call it 1.22. I even found a bunch of people on the internet that call it 1.26. Doc M was going on a rant about the update and he called it 1.25, and I realized, yeah, if a major YouTuber can get it that wildly wrong, then that says something about how the drops are named, which brings me back to this idea that Mojang needs to communicate better to solve all of these problems, and indeed also to solve the unknowns of the drop system. That's right, this video isn't just about what's good and what's bad, but broadly about what is not known, because there is so much, but there are two particular things I would love to hear from Mojang about, particularly when it comes to who is actually working on the drops. Is it that the exact same development team that will be working on an update now works on a drop over a shorter time period, or is it that different teams who would work on different features in an update will now work on different drops? An example of this might be that the spring drop, for example, heavily relied on aesthetically changing features. The new cow is functionally identical to the old one, except it spawns in different biomes and has an entirely different appearance. And so is it that these features were worked on by largely an art-driven team, whereas a programming-driven team can work on the summer drop? Or is it, in fact, that no, yeah, actually that doesn't happen at all? This is a big theory that would change the way we see drops and would help us understand that some drops are going to focus on much more, gameplay-heavy things, whereas some are going to focus on much more visual or, maybe aesthetic changes, and then some might be all based around menus or around stuff like that. Indeed, Custom Superflat is a great example of a change to Minecraft that changes everything, but also technically nothing at all, depending on what part of the game you consider to be the game. So which teams are working on which drops is an interesting question we don't know the answer to, but also, is every update a drop, or when does it stop being one? We obviously know that, say, 1.21 was an update and not a drop, but will they ever have updates again? And even more crucially, are smaller updates considered drops too? Minecraft Bedrock is quite famous for having an update system of 8 or 9 updates a year, and only about half of these are game drops. Are the other half still drops but Bedrock only, or are they considered to be something else? What is the name for those? Because obviously if we are saying updates means big things and drops means medium things, what do we refer to these parity updates that include things like I just mentioned, Custom Superflat? What do we refer to these updates by? And the answer is, honestly, we don't have any answer from Mojang, and it's a shame because I'm sure there's some people who internally have a great idea, but I bet that even inside Mojang, they could do with a lot of clarity, because the number of slight misnamings we have and the amount of confusion about what a version number is going to be is something that doesn't seem to just be us on the outside. And so really the end conclusion of this video is to say that I think that the drop system is doing good so far, and that Minecraft kind of needs to enter a new era every 5 years or so, and this is inevitably going to be this new era of Minecraft, which so far is looking shiny and great and is allowing us to have so much more content than we've had before. I love that this kind of brings us back to the old days of Minecraft, but I don't love the idea of it giving them less time to deal with parity, less time to gather feedback from the community, and indeed less time to actually make decently sized content drops, because right now the focus for each of these has been fun, but what happens when we want another big update for a new structure, or even let's say an entire dimension? Is that going to be possible in this one? The answer right now doesn't seem like it's going to be yes, and so if Minecraft is in its new era, and right now it's looking shiny, me, I think to be entirely fair, in 3 to 4 years, we'll probably be talking about how this was the worst change they ever made and how much we miss once a year updates, and then in 10 years we'll be talking about how much we miss game drops and how we wish they'd go back to them from whatever they were doing before, because the truth is, in Minecraft, consistent change seems like a scary thing, but it's what the game actually needs, and right now, it's what the game is actually getting. So even though a big part of me wants them to go back to the updates like they did with the Never update, an even bigger part of me wants them to go back to the way they did console edition updates, where genuinely there was a huge amount of surprise when they came out, the truth is that that isn't quite possible in the way Mojang wants to do things, and within the structure of what they want to do and what they can do, this seems like it is for the best, and I'm excited to see where the next few drops this year lead us, because we are getting 4, we're currently only about to see 2, and to be able to say that is such great news, but that's just my opinion. What do you think? Let me know in the comments that are below, and I hope that you enjoyed this video. Goodbye.